Welcome to I Feel Like.
Your ultimate guide to navigating life as a young adult.
We're your hosts,
Anna,
Dan,
and Evan.
And we're here to share our experiences and provide advice on everything from surviving college and forming relationships,
the situational etiquette, and maintaining a social life.
I feel like it's time to start the podcast.
Hi, welcome to today's episode of I Feel Like. On today's episode, we're going to be talking all about social media, our experiences with social media, all of the benefits and the consequences that can arise from it. And I guess let's just get into it.
Yeah, so I think something that I definitely want to mention early on is, I don't know if this is just me, but I personally find social media to be a little toxic at times, at least for myself. I think over the past couple of months, I've made it so that it's a little bit more of like a positive thing in my life. But I don't know. I'm kind of like on the fence with social media.
I definitely agree with that. I think it can really go back and forth between being a place that can be really good for people. It can bring about change, bring awareness to things, and also keep people informed. But on the other side, it also does kind of create this toxic environment of sorts. There's this need almost that like you need to like be better than other people and like based off of social media, things like that. And I think it could lead to overall feelings of, oh, I'm not as good as this other person. And this is all just based on what people are posting.
Right, because I know. Sorry, Evan, go ahead.
No, you go.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to monopolize the conversation. But what I was saying is this is more so like in high school, I guess, in like early freshman year college. I know like every time I went somewhere or did something with someone, I was very focused on getting some like picture perfect moment, capturing something to portray this like image that I'm having so much fun. I'm out here living my best life. I'm better than you, but like look at me. I'm so fun and cool. And that I think really affected like my relationships with other people, because then instead of, just being in the moment and having fun like with you guys, I would think like, oh, let's stop here and get this cute picture, only to post it and get like, I guess, I don't know what I was hoping for. I guess likes or comments of telling me that I was like cool or whatever. But then, it would never be enough. It's like, oh, I only got 200 likes. Well, why did I only get 200 likes? I guess people don't like this. I guess I'm not that cool. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like a mental game, I think.
Mm-hmm. Like, I definitely agree with that. And I guess this is kind of just going a little bit more like specific, but I know like on some accounts, Instagram over the past year has started removing like counts. So unless you're the person who posted the picture, you can't see how many likes other people have gotten. And I honestly think that that's like a really good thing because I know for me too, like I think sometimes when I post like, oh, like why didn't this get as many likes as normal? Like, did they not like it? Did they not think that this is like a cool activity that I was doing or anything like that? So I think that like removing like counts is like it really relieved a burden off of me almost to compare myself to others. And it's stupid because it's all just based on these silly numbers that don't mean anything. But I think it goes to show that just a simple thing like removing like counts really did relieve a burden and kind of made it almost an already better experience than before.
I didn't realize they took off life counts.
Well,
Or
don't you
like
also not have an Instagram?
well, yeah, I was gonna say before that I feel like you two have the social media and I'm not quite up to date, I guess I'll preface for the listeners. So I didn't know this, but that's very interesting that they did that, and I'm surprised they did that because I feel like I guess I wonder if that hurts maybe their money, you know what I mean, in some way. Or I'm wondering also like with YouTube, like that dislike button, why has that not gone away at this point too? You know what I mean? Who likes the dislike button?
I think that just to play devil's advocate, I do see in terms of a dislike button on YouTube, I do see some like things or instances where this could be useful because like you always see like especially YouTubers nowadays, they're posting these extreme things like pranks, videos that sometimes, or a lot of the time nowadays, just go too far. So I think that that dislike button is a great way for consumers of their media to inform the creator, hey, we don't like this, we don't necessarily support this behavior, and then hopefully would bring about change in what they're doing.
I think it's tough though because I do feel like there's definitely trolls in any solution they find. I feel like there's always going to be someone abusing it or making it not perfect. You know what I mean?
I
Mhm.
think the dislike and the like buttons, I think they also do kind of have something to do with the algorithm of YouTube and what they promote to people. I'm not exactly sure, but that's just what I've heard. Like when I watch videos, creators always like hit the like button. It like really helps with the algorithm. I don't know if that's just them
Yeah,
promoting themselves or if it's a fact,
I
but
was gonna say like that. You always hear that, and we say that, but like, what does it actually do? You know?
I'm not actually sure. But I wanted to comment back on the Instagram hiding the likes. I guess that's what you want to call it. I think that's a step in the right direction, but I think aside from those numerical um, values, it doesn't, for me to like feel bad about like my life or myself or just kind of like get negative. I don't think it is necessarily the numbers. It's more just the pictures because, everyone's only going to post their best content. Nobody's going to post a bad picture of themselves or like a bad day that they're having. So I think like especially during like quarantine, I know people aren't supposed to be going out and doing things, but when you see people post stuff, it's like, wow, like they're living such a better life than I am. I mean, numbers and comments aside, just seeing a picture, I think, can be like triggering and toxic enough.
I definitely agree with that, and I feel like, especially like things like Instagram, and I guess a little before our generation, but like Facebook, things like that, where it's like a lot of picture based. I feel
Facebook
like
is before our generation.
I would say a little bit.
I
I have a Facebook, but I can't say that I actively use
okay.
it.
I think our generation definitely had its moment on it, but I think we moved on from it. But I think it was made for us originally, for sure.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it was made for, I don't know.
Maybe I don't.
Well,
Regardless, you guys
We're
understand my
not getting into a
point.
Facebook debate.
I was just gonna say though, I do feel like these platforms where you are posting more like pictures or videos, things like that, like it does create this false sense of perfection. Like, oh, this person has to be perfect because that's what they decide to portray themselves as on social media. And I think that that does lead to probably increased levels of insecurity, maybe in other people who see themselves not on social media, but just like at home by themselves in person and be like, I don't look like how this person looks on social media, so I have to be worse than them, if that makes sense.
I think also what's kind of troubling with conveying these big messages with pictures is there's so much editing that goes on these days. Like every picture you see, especially from like major influencers, there's 100% chance that that image is not the original. There was some sort of retouching done, most likely, things to just make it look more perfect and better. And even with like a lot of women, the posing, like I've seen so much stuff on TikTok about like people show how different their bodies look in different poses. So I think just the fact that a picture can be edited and that a picture really does not tell a complete story or is not necessarily an accurate representation of what that person might look like or what the activity they were doing is like, I think that can also be really damaging. Whereas maybe like if you like on Twitter or something, if you're just saying like words, it's not like you can't manipulate that as much as a picture.
I guess it's kind of like a cycle, you know what I mean? Where someone posts that, so they kind of push that idea that you do need to live your perfect life, and that kind of makes other people post those similar things, and yeah, it's kind of
Yeah, no
cycle.
doubt. I think social media is kind of just one big competition. Who can go to the most exotic place? Who can get the best photo? Who can look the best in their bikini, like so on and so forth. And I think most people, they understand this and they know that these pictures are edited. They know that they were touched up or slimmed down or something like that, but it still kind of affects you, even though mentally you know this is probably really not what went on at all in this to get this picture, but it's still like part of you still believes it, even though you
Mhm.
know that that's not accurate per se.
Yeah, like we touched on this a little bit earlier too, but it's definitely like this false sense of like perfection that I was saying earlier, but like that can lead to problems like outside of just social media. Obviously, you'll have your feelings of insecurity, things like that, but that can also lead to a bunch of far more consequential things like eating disorders because they don't feel like they're as slim as these people in their edited pictures and things like that. And it really is just like a downward spiral, I guess, with the current climate of how social media, specifically like Instagram, Facebook, things like that, how these picture sharing sites are being like used nowadays.
I guess we are kind of moving away from that picture sharing um, social media though, because TikTok's really blown up, and I feel like that's more about, I don't want to say storytelling. I feel like that's exaggerating it, but you know what I mean. Like I feel like all I see on nowadays is like, oh, Instagram, work on your algorithm. Like you're not good and things like that. And like I don't really hear about people our age going on Facebook. So I guess we probably are moving away from that. Is that
Mhm.
good? I
I
guess.
think I think Instagram is kind of being phased out a little bit with the emergence of some new social medias, but I still think the same issues kind of exist on TikTok. Like look at Charlie D'Amelio. She's a very pretty girl,
True. Yeah. True.
very
Hmm.
very thin, pretty, like typical kind of like what's the ideal like look and body shape right now. And she's doing, these kind of like provocative dances. So it's like, again, most people probably don't look like her. Most people can't like dance as well as her. And it's almost like it's the same kind of thing, It's
I
still
guess it.
very visual based.
Yeah, and I guess it really depends on what you're seeing. Because I know I'm not seeing. I don't think I've ever seen a single Charlie video.
Charlie has like over 100 million
Yeah.
followers
Hmm.
on TikTok,
I guess she is pretty
and
big.
I'm not saying I think she's very talented, and I'm not saying anything against her, but I think if she were not pretty and thin and like had that look, I don't think she would be as successful as she is. Like I think you have to have the look, and I think that kind of brings up similar issues with Instagram.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just I guess going back a little bit to what Evan said, I think that we are moving in the right direction in terms of removing at least this level of toxicity that's kind of existed over the past decade. Because like I know like when we were growing up, when we were kids, cyberbullying was like a big thing that like we kind of focused on as kids. I think I don't know about you guys, but like the amount of assemblies that I had in like grade school about like cyberbullying and like don't do this was just like a
Yeah.
lot. And I
I
don't
think. Go ahead. Go
but I
ahead.
was just gonna say, like, I don't know because I'm not there today, but I wouldn't think that the kids today are getting nearly as many assemblies solely focused on cyberbullying as we did.
I hope this doesn't take us off topic, but I feel like all my assemblies in elementary school were about how you have not a yeah, like a footprint. What is that called? Like there's a
Like a
word before
digital
it. Yeah, there
footprint.
you go, digital footprint. I feel like I
I
had
almost said
all the
carbon footprint,
assemblies.
but I was like, wait, that's the wrong thing. Wrong footprint.
Yeah, I feel like I had a ton of assemblies on that.
I think the reason why we got so many assemblies is because the internet was really becoming popular then, and all these social medias were beginning to emerge. So I think I don't know what they teach in elementary schools, but I think that might have been the reason why we were so exposed to it.
And that would make sense too, because like other than like I guess millennials would be the one right above us. Like we're really one of the first generations to like fully grow up with the internet, with social media, all of these things. So I think that like we were almost like, I don't want to call us like the test subjects or anything like that, but we were kind of like putting like the foot in the water to see, oh, this is how social media is working. Now let's try to change the trend to make it a more go in a more positive direction.
And it's definitely grown a lot since we were, say, in middle school. I know Instagram used to be a lot more casual in that people would just take a picture on their phone and upload it. There wasn't all this editing and there weren't really as many influencers. So people weren't as concerned about coming off a certain way. It was a lot more realistic.
Well, I feel like even as a kid, I remember email being such a big deal and being like, oh, you have to be careful and like blah blah blah. So
We're lumping email in with social media.
I'm just saying, I remember as a kid, like I remember like things about like being careful with DMs and things like that. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Again, I think we have to remember that I'm very on the outside of this.
I
Well-
think, sorry, I was just gonna say, I think that something else that I've seen, I guess, what Anna said kind of reminded me of it, but recently within the past decade, people have started to realize that they can have a career and make money off of social media. So I think that too has kind of led to more toxicity in these social media communities, just because now we have all these like, I don't want to call us normal people, but all these non-influencers who are just comparing ourselves to our peers and everything like that. But then we also have these big influencers on these platforms that we compare to and feel lesser probably because of that. But then also the influencers just comparing and competing with one another.
I think that's actually a great point that you bring up. Yes, so many people, like creators and influencers, they get paid a ton of money to run these large accounts, and they get paid with sponsorships, and it's their job to create this content and to portray a certain like look or image. And yeah, and they're, since these people are practically like famous and have probably way more money than we have, they probably do get their hair and makeup done professionally, or they do have the money to go on these really luxurious exotic vacations, stuff that just really is probably not attainable for the average person. So I think that is a good point that you bring up, Dan, that we are comparing ourselves to something that like they're not a normal person, if you will. They're like a mini celebrity.
It's like a heightened version of, like, we see ourselves, I guess, in these influencers sometimes, but realistically, we can't compare to them because
Yeah, we
yeah.
can't relate to them. Well, before we spend too much of our time completely bashing social media, since we are an advice podcast after all, you think we should share some tips for staying in the right mindset or trying to make social media a less toxic place for yourself? So I know one thing I wanted to bring up is I probably did this once I went to college. I definitely went through the list of who I was following on Instagram mostly. And if I didn't really know them or I just wasn't really friends with them, I unfollowed them. I mean, high school was over and I guess we kind of knew each other just by word of mouth. But, this sounds rude, but it's like I don't really know you, so I don't really care about what you're up to. And I think by doing a little bit of a cleanse, if you just don't see as much stuff, then you don't feel as bad because you're not exposed to it.
I think that definitely makes sense. I know when I went to college, I also kind of did this unfollowing cleanse, if you will, just because I realized like, oh, I was following a lot of these people and it's like, I don't even know why I was following these people. But I think like my feed now, especially, is just people that I'm like close with or like they're pretty good friends, things like that. And I think that overall has just created a less, I don't want to keep using the word toxic, but like it's created a less like harmful environment. It really just allows me to like be casual, post things that I want to post, things like that.
And I think
Like-
by
Go ahead.
not seeing as much stuff or not having pictures to compare of like what your peers are doing. I think it puts a lot less pressure on you to look a certain way or do things that like seem that are deemed cool by like society. So I think it just, at least for me, it helped me a little bit focus on what I value and what's important to me instead of what might get a good reaction.
I don't know if this is true, but I definitely heard this somewhere where like having less friends is better for your health and having more can lead to like anxiety apparently. So I don't know if that directly correlates to social media.
I
Mm,
don't know if it correlates to to social media, but I would say in life, I maybe just because I'm like tend to be more introverted, but I definitely have less friends in college than I did in high school. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it eliminates some of the drama and
But the
it
drama's the
helps
best
me
part.
it helps me focus on like people that I actually care about instead of trying to maintain some like fake friendship with someone.
I definitely agree with that. I think like for all of us, our high school friend group was bigger than our college friend group. And my high school friend group was great too. Like I'm not bashing them whatsoever. It was great. But like my college one, I definitely feel like there's a lot less drama. There's a lot less like walking on eggshells to avoid hurting people's feelings. And it really does allow me to kind of take a breather, relax a little bit. And I guess it kind of does relate to social media in a way because like just lowering that number, whether it be followers or whatever, like it does remove a burden a little bit of like having to always put your best self out there, I guess.
Another thing that I wanted to bring up, another tip for making social media a better place for you is I started doing this more recently, just following things that I'm interested in, like for example, cooking and baking and stuff like that is something that I really enjoy. So I've followed like the Bon Appetit page and like Food Network and kind of other well-known people in that industry. So I do enjoy seeing like pictures of things that they made or links to recipes. So I think by including things that you're interested in, whatever that may be, things that like align with your values or hobbies, instead of necessarily like people or celebrities, can be helpful. And I think it gives me more of a reason to use it to learn more.
hmm I don't know if this goes along with kind of the trend of increasing positivity in social media or also just generally growing up. But I do think that like not being ashamed of your interests is a big part of kind of getting over this hurdle. Because I know like especially like in high school things like that, like I would be embarrassed to follow like certain things or whatever just because I thought it wouldn't fit the norm or it wouldn't be cool. But as I grew up and went to college, things like that, you just start to realize this is what I'm interested in. Why should I care what other people that I hardly know think of that? And I think that is just kind of interesting how sure that would come naturally with growing up, but also this evolution of making social media casual again, things like that, has kind of allowed for this concept to emerge.
I would say for me, part of the reason why I think I followed so many people that I didn't really know was to avoid like a feeling of missing out, which I think is really common for people. And I think once I kind of got over that, I realized, yeah, I'm really not I don't feel like I'm missing out. I really don't follow that many people from like high school or anything. A lot of the stuff I follow is like interest accounts, and I do follow some people, but they're not like huge celebrities and influencers for the most part. But it was definitely hard to take the step to unfollow people, but I'm glad that I did, and I don't feel like I'm missing out, even though I think that is what prevented me from taking that step for so long.
hmm I think overall, in general, like just kind of using social media to make yourself happy is a good thing that we can take away from this, because social media does have a lot of benefits like we recently talked about, but it also has a ton of drawbacks. All of this negativity that is starting to go away but still definitely exists. But kind of overcoming all of this and just like obviously easier said than done, but just not caring about what other people think of you. You know who you are. You know your true self, not just the self that you portray. And I think that like overcoming these maybe societal hurdles and boundaries that we set up for ourselves and these walls that we built is just a really good way to not only make social media a more enjoyable place, but also just make you a more general, happier person.
I think it's also important to highlight some of the positives. I know we've really harped on the negatives, but something that over the past few months that I really appreciated about social media, in particular TikTok, is I've really educated myself a lot. I found a lot of great accounts that talk about personal finance, and then I've also seen great things about like interview tips and getting a job and kind of just navigating the corporate world, which like as a college person who's kind of close to graduating, I find that really helpful, and I've seen a lot of cooking videos about tips and recipes. So I don't think it's all bad, and I think if you follow the right types of accounts that align with what you want to learn or the the self-improvement that you want, I think it can be really positive, because I've definitely learned so much on TikTok, especially with personal finance. That's stuff that I never would have learned in school. And I don't know that I would have taken the time to look it up on my own had I not seen it on a convenient platform like TikTok.
Just kind of going back, just following what you want, following for your own personal growth. This is great ways to use social media. Don't just do it for, we've been harping on this so much, but don't just do it because you feel like you have to. Or I guess don't do things because you feel like you have to. Do what you want to do. And I think that that's just our biggest takeaway that we can give you right now.
Well, I guess I should give my 2 cents now because Dan said don't do anything you don't want to. And I guess I'll add that like I didn't have any social media until the end of high school because I got it thinking, oh, I'll stay in touch with people. And I haven't used it for that. And I definitely regret getting it. But I guess I'll just say, like, personally, I am kind of glad I stayed off of social media. And I mean, again, if you find those positive communities, great. But like personally, I think I really dodged a bullet in the beginning of my life.
He's better than us because he didn't get social media.
And not just because like, oh, I know when I was a kid, I was always told like, oh, don't get it because it'll not help you get a job and things like that. But now like looking at it socially and like looking at all my friends and like how much they obsess over it, you know what I mean? In high school, it was so dominant over everyone's life. I feel like it was such a problem. And I feel like I really dodged a bullet. But maybe it's different for kids nowadays, you know? Like who even knows?
I think it's probably worse for kids nowadays because I feel like the earlier you kind of get hooked on it, the harder,
Yeah.
like just like any addiction, if
And they
you start
probably are getting
smoking at
hooked.
15,
Yeah.
you're probably, it's going to be very hard to quit. Where I think you, since you never really got into it, I wouldn't be surprised if you kind of stay away from it for the rest of your life just because it was
Mhm.
never really a part of it. So I think it's harder to get hooked on stuff the later you start.
I know,
I don't
like
know.
I know, like for me, I didn't get probably social media until like end of middle school, beginning of high school. I don't know if that's late or not, but I know kids nowadays are getting in like third, fourth grade. Also, they're getting iPhones way too early, but that's another.
I agree. But
That's another topic.
I kind of want to do a topic on that.
But like, yeah, like I think you're definitely right that it's probably a lot harder for like the youth of today, if you will, just because like they are starting at these young ages, like as early I've seen as like 7, 8, 9, 10. Like that's, in my opinion, at least that's way too early to be exposed to this culture that exists on social media that can be so toxic.
Yeah, I've seen little children on TikTok like making God only knows what. But yeah, I don't even know how they get a TikTok that young because I feel like most apps you have to be 13, but I don't know.
And I feel it totally just eluded me, but whatever. Yeah.
We'll come back to you if you remember.
No, I don't. I don't remember.
Maybe we'll come back to it next episode.
Okay, I'll bring it up at the start of the next episode.
So tune in next week to see if Evan remembered his thought.
If this was gonna happen to anyone, of course it would happen to me.
And it would happen when
Yeah.
our time's almost up.
Yeah.
So I guess with that, I think social media kind of depends on the person. So if you don't have these issues, if you don't feel insecure about yourself, good for you. Good for you. Just, I guess, do what you're doing and don't take our advice, because it seems like there's not a problem if you fall under that category. But for those of you who do feel insecure at times or feel like it can be toxic, just know that you're not alone.
I think that's the
That
point
probably
of-
sounded so cheesy.
But I think, like, in all honesty, like, it does get better. Sure, it also comes with just maturing and growing up and caring less about what people think of you. But, like, I definitely see, and I do hope that we are moving in a more progressive trend, and where social media isn't focused just on this negativity, comparing yourself to others, and it is just focused on expressing yourself and sharing what you want to share, the content that you want to put out there.
So with all that being said, make sure you follow us on social media. I'm just kidding. I'm not trying to pressure anyone into doing anything.
But if you are
they don't want
interested,
to.
and this is the content that you want to see, then you definitely can follow us on social
I
media.
promise we try our best not to be part of the toxic internet community, but that you just might have to give us a follow to try it out for yourselves.
And if you think that we are, definitely call us out on it in the comments. Give us
Give
a
us
like
the
if you want.
If I had social media, I would follow us.
Wow.
there you have it, folks.
There you have it.
Evan would follow his own podcast.
Evan's expert testimonial right there.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode.
Be sure to like and follow our podcast on whatever platform you're currently listening to it on.
Check out our social media, linked in the description, and tune in next week for even more advice.
TTYL.
From IFL.
Bye!